Venture into the shadows of your own understanding and dare to ask, what if the intricate tapestry of doctrine you have woven around the book of Revelation is not a window to the divine, but a heavy curtain blinding you to the ultimate reality? Suppose I were to unveil the terrifying truth that the 13th chapter, the ascension of the abomination, the branding of the soul, and the relentless hunting of the holy ones, is not some distant apocalypse waiting at the edge of time, but a living nightmare breathing down our necks this very hour upon the soil of America. And what if I were to murmur directly into the depths of your spirit that the specific souls marked for eradication, those chosen for systematic ruin, those who are crushed daily beneath the iron gears of this beastly machine, are in truth the living, breathing blood, descendants of the ancient, biblical Israelites? I can feel the walls of resistance erecting within your heart. You whisper to yourself, "This is sheer lunacy. This cannot be so." You reason, "Surely this is merely a fable spun by a weaver of conspiracies, a phantom conjured from thin air." Yet, before you avert your gaze, before you discard the ancient wisdom I am poised to reveal, I beg you to meditate upon a single, piercing inquiry. Why have the sacred sanctuaries of the Church never guided your spiritual sight to perceive the mysteries of revelation through this precise and terrifying prism? For what dark purpose have the orators of the pulpit spent centuries steering your vision toward Rome, toward the distant shores of Europe, or toward some ghostly Antichrist awaiting birth, while never once summoning the courage to scrutinize the great tribulation unfurling here directly beneath our watchful eyes, tormenting a specific bloodline that aligns flawlessly with every prophetic sign etched into the eternal scrolls? The chilling reality is that a profound and calculated motive exists for keeping this sacred connection shrouded in the deepest darkness. There is a deliberate design behind why the principalities and powers of this age have toiled without rest to bury this divine disclosure beneath the earth. For in the instant your spiritual eyes are unsealed, the moment you comprehend that chapter 13 narrates our present struggle rather than a future fantasy, the very bedrock of your existence will shift irrevocably. Your perception of the annals of history is transmuted. Your grasp of unfolding calamities is altered. Your intimate communion with the Holy Scriptures is birthed anew. Most vitally, your realization of the true identity of the Creator's chosen remnant changes for all eternity. Therefore, permit me to swear a solemn oath to you in this sacred space. By the time we arrive at the terminus of this spiritual odyssey, you will gaze upon the 13th chapter of Revelation with eyes washed clean and vision renewed. You will fully grasp why the gears of the global economy, the gavels of the courts, and the pillars of religious institutions are all architected to ensnare one solitary, specific bloodline. You will fathom the abyssal depths of why your ancestors, should you flow from this sacred stream, endured the unimaginable agony that was their destined lot. You will finally pierce the veil to discern the spiritual root of the trials, tribulations, and sorrows that besiege you in this present day. And you will see with crystalline clarity why the destiny of your offspring, and indeed the very survival of truth itself, hinges upon this forbidden knowledge bursting into the light. This is no mere conjecture, nor is it the idle fancy of interpretation. This is the ancient biblical prophecy manifesting in our timeline, breathing, pulsing, and alive. The shockwaves of this truth are nothing short of earth-shattering. After drinking from this vessel of truth, you will never open the Scriptures with the same mind again. You will never glance at the headlines of the crumbling world with the same innocent gaze. The systems, structures, and monuments of this fallen realm will never appear to your sight as they did in the days of your slumber. So gird your spirit and prepare the chambers of your heart, for we are about to descend into the profound depths of the Word, into the buried annals of history, into the raging current of events, and into a verity that has been concealed for far too many eons. Let us commence our excavation by consulting the sacred text itself. We turn our eyes to the 13th chapter of Revelation, beginning at the first verse. And I stood upon the shifting sands of the great sea, and I beheld a beast rising from the abyssal depths, bearing 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns were 10 diadems, and upon his heads was written the name of blasphemy. Now, without delay, we must pierce the veil of allegory to comprehend what this rising monstrosity truly signifies in the physical realm. In the cryptic tongue of prophecy, beasts are the avatars of kingdoms, empires, and vast political dominions. The 7th chapter of Daniel illuminates this axiom with the clarity of a diamond. The 4 beasts sketched by Daniel representing 4 distinct kingdoms confirm this. Thus, when John witnesses this Leviathan emerging from the waters, he is witnessing the ascent of a governmental hierarchy, a titan of power asserting its dominion. However, herein lies the esoteric secret that the vast majority of scholars and teachers fail to grasp. The sea, in the lexicon of the divine, symbolizes peoples, chaotic multitudes, nations, and tongues. Revelation chapter 17, verse 15, explicitly unveils this profound mystery. Therefore, this beast ascends from the churning midst of the nations, specifically rising from the Gentile realms, the kingdoms of the earth. And what is its dark design? Verse 2 proclaims with thunderous voice, "And the beast which I beheld was likened unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon bestowed upon him his dark power, and his throne, and great authority." This passage depicts a composite empire, a terrifying amalgamation absorbing the dark characteristics and spiritual weight of all the world empires that preceded it. The lion represents the ferocious might of Babylon. The bear signifies the crushing force of Medo-Persia. The leopard stands for the swift conquest of Greece. And now we confront Rome and its inevitable continuation. The Western European colonial order that has held the globe in its iron grip for the past 500 years. The truth is plain for those with spiritual eyes to see. The dragon, identified as Satan himself in Revelation chapter 12, verse 9, is the malevolent source that fuels this beastly system with its supernatural power. Thus, we speak of a governmental Leviathan that carries within its veins the spiritual DNA of every fallen empire of the past. Now, observe closely what transpires next, in verse 3. "And I saw one of his heads as if it had been wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world marveled and followed after the beast." Reflect deeply upon this enigma. The Roman Empire fell, did it not? It received a mortal blow that shattered its structure. Yet, ask yourself, did the spirit of Rome truly perish, or did it merely shed its skin and transform? Did it not persist through the Holy Roman Empire, through the papal hierarchy, through the age of colonialism, through the British Empire, and now through the towering hegemony of America? The system of the beast never truly succumbed to the grave. It simply adopted new forms, new masks to deceive the ages. And the entire world, every nation upon this earth, now operates under the colossal shadow of this Western-dominated order. They marvel at its splendor, they bow down to its might, they emulate its economic models, adhere to its political structures, and idolize its cultural values as the standard of truth. Verse 4 drives this reality home with terrifying precision. "And they worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. They cast themselves into the dust before the Leviathan, voices trembling with a terrified reverence as they cry, 'Who among us can rival this monstrosity? Who holds the might to stand against such a titan? Look upon your world this very hour. Query your own soul. What monolithic empire currently exercises total sovereignty over the terrestrial sphere? Which singular way of existence has been seamlessly woven into the spiritual bloodstream of every land, from the rising sun to its setting? Whose legions are so vast that no earthly throne dares lift a sword in rebellion? Whose intricate web of coin and commerce, the trinities of capital, unbound markets, and central vaults, locks away the prosperity of every nation behind iron gates? Gaze upon the horror, for this is the beast incarnate. This is the global machine. And whether the multitudes awaken from their coma or remain lost in the dream, they are actively offering their devotion at its altar. They feed its hunger. They rely upon its machinery for the very air filling their lungs. Yet, it is here that the oracle becomes personal. It is here that the parchment of old collides violently with the pulse of our current epoch. Let us descend into the 7th verse. And it was granted unto him to wage war against the holy ones, and to conquer them. And authority was bestowed upon him over every tribe and tongue and nation. Did your spirit sense the crushing gravity of those syllables? The Leviathan conducts an eternal crusade not against the wicked nor the heathens, but against those set apart by divinity. He hunts the heritage of the Creator, a specific lineage marked by the Scriptures as the chosen, the bearers of the ancient promise and the covenant. I beseech you now to halt in the silence, allowing this heavy realization to sink into the marrow of your being. If this global apparatus is truly executing a campaign against a specific ancestry, would we not possess the spiritual vision to recognize them walking among us? Would not the pages of our chronicles be saturated with the crimson evidence of a systematic assault directed at this singular people? Would we not observe unmistakable cycles of subjugation, of precision strikes, and of cold, calculated machinations designed to erase their memory, their customs, and their very breath from the face of the earth? Clutch that epiphany to your chest, for we are preparing to stitch together the raveled ends of time to expose a reality that has remained cloaked in shadow from the gaze of the masses. Let us speak now of the brand of commerce. Direct your inner eye to the 13th chapter of Revelation, verses 16 and 17. And he compels all, the small and the great, the wealthy and the destitute, the free and the bond, to accept a mark upon their right hand or upon their foreheads, that no man might engage in trade, save he who bears the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. For ages, scholars of the end times have exhausted themselves whispering of silicon chips, barcodes, and the phantom wealth of the digital ether, while it remains true that the machine may serve as the chariot for the final act. We are compelled to gaze into the abyss beneath. Consider if the mark is not a trinket of futuristic invention, but a searing of the soul. What if the mark is a declaration of identity, a branding by the empire, forcing one to survive within a financial lattice that determines if you are granted entry to the bazaar or cast out to perish in the wasteland? Reflect upon the ruthless, draconian ritual known to history as redlining. This was a methodical ceremony, blessed by the thrones of governance, where entire populations were encaged upon maps by crimson borders of isolation. These souls were refused the gold of lenders, the deeds to homes, and the resources required to construct a destiny. They were prohibited from acquiring land. They were rendered powerless to vend their own holdings. They were barred from standing on the trading floor of the economy alongside their brethren. And who were the spirits inhabiting these scarlet-ringed domains? They were, in the overwhelming majority, the sons and daughters of the shackled. They were the very ones wandering the earth today, under the title of African Americans. Now, let the numbers bear witness. The abyss of prosperity in the Americas is no random stroke of fortune, The scrolls of data unveil that the median treasure of families of African lineage is a mere tithe, 1/10 of that possessed by families of European blood. How does such a catastrophe materialize in the nation that proclaims itself the land of infinite horizons? How does a complete people remain pulverized beneath the wheel of commerce, age after age, unless a systemic brand has been burned into their flesh? There stands a structural fortification, a phantom wall barring them from the fullness of the harvest. Let us discuss the prejudice festering within the temples of usury. It is etched into the legal records. It is the denial of lending based upon nothing but the blood running through one's veins. They are burdened with heavier tithes for the same trustworthiness. They endure the refusal of capital for their trades at frequencies that mock the laws of chance. It is the calculated prevention of legacy, ensuring the groundwork remains forever shifting, never allowing the house to stand firm. To tend to this festering economic lesion, we observe modern machinations, such as the policies for zones of opportunity. This decree selected over 8,700 anguish-filled territories to receive the coin of private merchants, seeking to breathe fire into regions historically branded by ruin and banishment. Yet, here lies the most shattering apocalypse of truth: the industry of cages and steel. The mass entombment of living men has abducted millions of spirits, drawn overwhelmingly from one specific tribe, stripping them of all economic agency. One cannot trade nor barter when one is bound in iron fetters. You cannot raise a kingdom when you bear the scarlet mark of the criminal record, a brand that forbids you from honorable toil. Halt your mind and weigh the immensity of this chain. Does this not resonate with the thunderous prophecy of Revelation 13? A Leviathan system that wields the authority to dictate who may purchase and who may peddle their wares. A regime that tags specific souls for financial banishment. The mark requires no visible silicon shard to execute its terrible purpose. The mark is the identity thrust upon you by the beast's machine. The mark is the station of the lesser caste. The mark is the heavy yoke draped across a people's shoulders to guarantee they never ascend in the marketplace. And the shadow grows longer still. Let us scrutinize the persecution enacted by the gavel and the scroll. Revelation chapter 13. 1, 13 time. 1, 13 time. The 7th verse proclaims, "The beast makes war with the saints and conquers them." What visage does this warfare wear in our current age? It is not always fought with armored chariots and rain of fire. At times, the battle is fought with statutes. At times, the sword is judicial. At times, it is a systematic hunt through decrees crafted to imprison, to crush, and to steer the fate of a lineage toward destruction. Let us whisper of the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. You are familiar with the decree, the one that allegedly shattered the chains of bondage in the year 1865. But did it truly liberate? Read the ink, with eyes unclouded by illusion. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, save as a penalty for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States. Save as a penalty for a crime, gaze now into the abyss, a gaping and treacherous chasm sufficiently immense to allow the entire colossal machinery of modern captivity to march unopposed through its desolate heart. Do not for a moment believe this was a twist of fate. It was a precision-engineered mechanism, engaged the very instant the iron chains were ostensibly shattered, and the dark age of servitude was declared a relic of history. A shadow was cast across the southern territories, a sinister tapestry of legislation christened the Black Codes, woven with malice to ensnare the newly liberated in a labyrinth of legal deceit. These draconian decrees transmuted the most mundane rhythms of daily existence into felonies, Yet this iron fist descended with crushing weight solely upon those who had only just begun to breathe the air of freedom. To merely draw breath without a master became a crime against the state charged with vagrancy, idleness, walking beneath the moonlight, or gathering in fellowship suddenly. Thousands of free souls were bound in shackles once more for transgressions conjured from thin air. Once the gavel struck its final note, they were sold back into the grinding, insatiable maw of the plantations, the sunless mines, and the factories, rebranded now not as property, but as convict laborers. Let no illusion blind you. The institution of bondage never truly ceased its pulse. It simply donned a mask of judicial legitimacy and continued its grim harvest under a sanitized and bureaucratic title. Cast your eyes forward to our present epoch and witness the so-called war on narcotics, a crusade initiated around 1972, whose very architects have since confessed it was a weapon forged specifically to dismantle select lineages. John Ehrlichman, a high-ranking counselor to the throne of President Nixon, eventually drew back the veil on this conspiracy, exposing the rot within. In a revelation from 1994, he admitted that this crusade was never truly about substances, but about the criminalization of dissent and the systematic fracturing of a people's spirit. Hear the chilling precision of his confession echoing through time. We could arrest their leaders, raid their sanctuaries, break up their assemblies, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. He concluded with a haunting truth that demands our attention. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. Contemplate the sheer scale of devastation that trailed in the wake of that lie. Mandatory minimums, the 3 strikes laws, and policies crafted to steal decades of life in takenning's parity for non-violent infractions, locking away entire generations behind cold, unyielding steel bars. In a desperate attempt to bind the wounds of this fractured landscape, the First Step Act was inscribed into the scrolls of law in 2018. This measure sought to stem the rising tide of returning prisoners and mend the sentencing disparities that have ravaged minority communities for generations. Yet the question remains, who truly inhabits these cages? In this current era of 2026, those of African lineage constitute roughly 13% of the populace, yet they comprise nearly 40% of those languishing in chains. This is no mere statistical anomaly, nor a capricious twist of fate. It is a systematic siege waged through the power of the gavel and the silence of the cell. It aligns with terrifying, supernatural precision to the ancient prophecies found in Revelation chapter 13. Pause here, and let the gravity of this truth settle deep within your spirit. When you behold the data, when you scrutinize the laws, when you witness the cycle repeating century upon agonizing century, can you truly deny that a coordinated, spiritual assault is underway? Is it not possible that the ancient vision recorded in Revelation 13 is describing the very reality unfolding before our mortal eyes right now? Let us descend further into the spiritual abyss to uncover the profound cultural dimensions of this warfare. For the battle is not merely physical. The prophecy speaks of a mysterious mark upon the forehead or the hand. The forehead represents the seat of your consciousness, your memory, your very identity and will. The hand symbolizes your industry, your labor, the fruit of your strength. What if this mark is far more than a physical brand, but a psychological and cultural imposition designed to enslave the soul? Consider if the mark is a counterfeit identity, forced upon you by the beast system to obliterate the memory of your divine inheritance and separate you from your true power. Here is a query that should shake the foundations of your understanding. Why are the descendants of the biblical Israelites labeled merely as African American? Why are they not recognized as Hebrew American? Why is the title Israelite American left unspoken? It is because the system birthed a new designation to bury the ancient one. The principalities of this world erased their true lineage and substituted a geographic tag, severing the sacred link to their biblical bloodline and their covenant with the divine. This acts as a monumental disruption of history and self. This is the true manifestation of the mark upon the forehead, the fundamental altering of the mind. You have been assigned a name, a category, a construct engineered by the empire to induce a collective amnesia regarding your true essence and celestial origin. Reflect upon the transatlantic tragedy itself. Names were stripped away, tongues were silenced, the ancient songs were stifled in the throat, ancestral rites were beaten out of the flesh. Families were shattered to ensure that wisdom could not bridge the gap between generations. This was more than chains on the body, it was an assault on the soul. It was a systematic dismantling of the spirit, a cultural lobotomy performed on a massive scale to create a people without a past. The objective was absolute: to delete the memory, to obscure the history, to sever the covenant connection, and for centuries it succeeded. But the prophets, in their wisdom, saw it coming. Deuteronomy chapter 28. The list of curses for turning away from the Most High foretold every harrowing detail. The ships, the bondage, the worship of strange gods, the total loss of self. Every single curse has materialized in the tapestry of history. Yet, the most cunning trap of all remains the deep religious deception. Revelation 13 verse 11 warns us, "And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon." This represents the false prophet, a spiritual authority that mimics the gentleness of Christ and the appearance of truth, yet utters commands that serve the dark adversary. And what fruit has this institutional religion borne throughout the ages? Christianity, the very path that should have shattered the chains of God's people, was weaponized to weld them tighter. Men stood in holy places and cited Ephesians chapter 6, verse 5, with malice. "Servants, be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling." The sacred word was twisted during these dark eras to justify the unjust. They manufactured a gospel of submission to tyranny rather than a gospel of liberation from it. Even the Vatican sat at the beating heart of this conspiracy, orchestrating the spiritual downfall of nations. Pope Nicholas V promulgated a papal bull in 1452, known as Dum Diversas, granting Portugal the divine license to enslave Africans into perpetuity. The Church consecrated the slave ships. The Church reaped immense wealth from human misery. Holy orders held plantations. Bishops possessed living souls as mere property. The system hijacked the divine to sanctify its atrocities, wrapping the cross in the flag of oppression and sealing the fate of millions under the guise of holiness. That vast and deceptive temple, cloaked in robes of holiness, yet kneeling before a shadowy throne, grinds its gears even now. It commands the slumber of the multitude, silencing their cries and forcing them to drink down injustice as if it were the holy wine of the Creator. But come, let us step off the paved road of accepted lies and journey into the wilder terrain of forgotten truth, piercing the heavy veil of illusion that blinds the world. We must drift back to the very dawn of things, tracing the scarlet lineage and ancient whispers that connect the dusty plains of old Israel to the cold, hard concrete of our modern reality. Let this be understood clearly. We are not weaving cobwebs of conspiracy here, nor are we chasing fleeting shadows in the dark. This reality is burned into the sacred parchment, carved into the bedrock of time itself, and twisted into the very genetic spiral of a people scattered by the 4 winds, hunted, broken, and marked exactly as the prophets of old declared they would be. Cast your spiritual eye first upon the children of Israel, the living legacy of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. 12 tribes, hand-picked by the divine to burn as a torch for the nations, to carry the heavy yoke of his law and mirror his glory. Yet we must ask, what terrible shadows swallowed them when they strayed from the narrow way? What endless night fell upon them when the holy contract was snapped in two? The answer waits, inscribed in blood and fire within the 28th chapter of Deuteronomy. The prophet Moses saw two divergent timelines, one of radiant favor for the faithful, and another of absolute ruin for the rebellious. These were not idle threats, but prophecies of terrifying accuracy. Hear the warning of Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 15. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. Most seekers close the book too soon, but you must read on, for the text unrolls a dark map of exile, a forced scattering that mirrors the transatlantic nightmare with a precision that chills the blood. The ancient doom describes a global dispersion that aligns with the oceanic trade in human souls, with an exactitude that should make the spirit tremble. Verse 32 foresees the heartbreak. Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thine eyes shall look and fail, with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thine hand. Visualize the horror of families ripped apart, the innocent sold off like cattle, while mothers and fathers stood frozen in impotence, watching strangers drag away their own flesh and blood. Does this not summon the weeping phantoms of the auction blocks in Charleston, in New Orleans, in Richmond, where the sacred knot of kinship was severed for silver, sold to the highest bidder? And verse 37 whispers the future. And thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations, whither the Lord shall lead thee. Ask your soul, which bloodline has been reduced to a racial slur, a stereotype, a walking caricature in every shadow of the earth where they have been driven? Who are the ones stripped of their divine nature, transmuted into objects of mockery, ridicule, and fear across the vast expanse of the known world? The ancient foresight is razor-sharp, yet one specific verse remains to lock the truth in place like a royal signet ring pressing into hot wax. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 68, thunders, And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again, with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Understand that Egypt is the spiritual code for the house of bondage. And how were these souls ferried to this new land of iron chains? Not by the dust of the caravan road, but by the rotting timber of ships crossing the Atlantic, the Middle Passage, that voyage of damned souls where millions exhaled their last breath in the dark bellies of floating dungeons. Look closer at that cryptic phrase declaring that no man shall buy you. This speaks not of a lack of customers at the market, but of a degradation so absolute that the human soul is deemed worthless, purchased for pennies, and treated as chattel beneath the dignity of beasts, their value erased by the system. And the chronicles of history stand as grim witnesses that this is exactly the nightmare that manifested in the waking world. Souls stacked like inanimate crates, skin branded with hot iron like livestock, lives traded like currency. The ancient omen was fulfilled to its very last, agonizing syllable. Let us drift backward through the corridors of time to map this exodus. The children of Israel faced the crushing weight of empires. First, the Assyrian hordes swept away the northern kingdom in 722 before Christ. Then the Babylonians descended, smashing the southern kingdom in the year 586 before Christ. Centuries later, the Roman legions burned the temple to ash in the year 70, scattering the remnants. But where did they run? The records reveal that multitudes fled southward, vanishing into the welcoming embrace of Africa. Even Josephus, the celebrated historian of the Jews, chronicled these vast migrations into Egypt and the territories lying deep beyond it. The patriarchs of the early church wrote of Israelite communities thriving in North Africa, in the highlands of Ethiopia, and along the ivory coasts of the West. Here lies the secret that the architects of the modern illusion wish to keep buried deep in the earth. The ancient Israelites were never of pale European stock. The scriptures paint them as a people who could dissolve into the Egyptian population without distinction, possessing skin kissed dark by the desert sun and features deepened by the melanin of the earth. In the Song of Solomon, chapter 1, verse 5, the bride declares with power, "I am black but comely, O ye daughters of Jerusalem." Lamentations chapter 4, verse 8, weeps for them, "Their visage is blacker than a coal." Jeremiah cries out in chapter 8, verse 21, "For the hurt of the daughter of my people am I hurt, I am black." And Job, in chapter 30, verse 30, mourns, "My skin is black upon me." The truth is woven into the very fabric of the text. Yet centuries of Western artistry, eras of whitewashed canvases, have conditioned the global mind to see these ancient figures through a distorted European lens. It was a fabrication. They were, in absolute truth, an Afro-Asiatic people, rich in color and born of the sun. When the great diaspora began, they retreated deep into the heart of the African continent, mingling their bloodlines with the tribes that dwelled there. Thus, when the ghost ships of the transatlantic trade arrived in the 1500s, the descendants of ancient Israel were counted among those shackled and stolen from the West African shores. I feel the question rising like a tide in your spirit. How can we be certain? Is there tangible proof of this ancestral and spiritual tether? Allow me to unveil revelations that may shake your foundations. First, modern genetic studies have discovered undeniable threads connecting specific West African lineages directly to the ancient populations of the Middle East. Ponder, if your spirit permits, the indelible watermarks burned into the very soul of chosen bloodlines. Turn your gaze toward the Igbo of Nigeria, the Lemba of the southern dust, and those who bear the quiet yet crushing burden of a holy legacy, sustained by the songs of elders and the undeniable script of genetics, linking them to the Hebrew fathers. Across the relentless grinding stone of the centuries, these dispersed spirits have wandered far from home, yet they held fiercely to the rites of the patriarchs, the covenant cut in flesh, the sacred stillness of the Sabbath, and the clean eating laws that reflect Israel's ancient path, standing firm against the erasing winds of time. Listen now for the spiritual reverberations that refuse to be silenced, the ghostly harmonies drifting up from the fields of sorrow and iron. "Go down, Moses," they chanted, their voices cutting through the humid oppression of a modern Egypt, demanding the taskmasters of the age release the shackled offspring of the Most High. Why did this archaic story vibrate so intensely within their bones? Because it was never a fable adopted from another. It was their own chronicle, alive and breathing within them. They shed no tears for a foreign liberation. They agonized for their stolen birthright, screaming for a redemption they knew was sworn to them by oath. That ironclad belief that melody birthed in the deepest abyss erupted from a spiritual helix, an eternal tether binding them to the promise of the Creator. It was the tangible rising of an ancestral memory. And beyond this, we must confront the terrifying accuracy of the prophetic scrolls concerning the curses of disobedience. Deuteronomy chapter 28 whispered that adversaries would rule over the elect, as seen in verses 43 and 44, prophesying a fall into the worship of empty husks, gods of carved wood and cold stone, just as verse 36 foretold. We witnessed this horror manifest when the lash drove a hollow, foreign interpretation of the messianic path into the backs of a shattered nation, a twisted dogma, completely unrecognizable to the truth their forefathers cherished. Fulfilling the warning of being crushed and oppressed without pause, as written in verse 33, it decreed that the foreigner within your borders would rise to the peaks, while the heirs of the covenant would crumble into the dirt, falling lower and lower, verse 43, made flesh. Every single whisper of this ancient verdict has materialized in the tragic, blood-drenched odyssey of those lost to the transatlantic crossing. Yet, the deepest tragedy dwells in the great hush that followed. The spiritual umbilical cord was severed, the memory wiped clean, and the true identity pilfered under the cover of darkness. Visualize the terror of being ripped from the earth that knew your feet, stripped of your righteous name, and forbidden to utter the language of your mothers. Conceive of the pain of the lash for keeping your traditions, being auctioned like livestock apart from your kin, and being told you are a creature without history, born of void to return to void. This was not random cruelty, but a calculated era of systemic erasure, a surgical dismantling of spirit and culture, executed with chilling exactness. It was entirely by design. The grand conspiracy aimed to induce a total collective amnesia, ensuring you would never recall you are the seed of Jacob, the offspring of Abraham, the very people of the pact. Whether the infamous missive of Willie Lynch is historical parchment or symbolic shadow, the dark sorcery it outlines was undeniably woven into the fabric of our reality. The tactic was lucid and brutal. Fracture the enslaved by the hue of their skin, by the tally of their winters, and by the nature of their gender. Pit brother against brother, crush the warrior spirit of the man, and twist the nurturing role of the woman to spawn chaos, shattering the family altar until trust evaporates and unity becomes a myth. And devastatingly, the hex took root. Generations emerged from the ash disconnected from their regal ancestry, swallowing the lies of the oppressor and wearing a heavy cloak of inferiority. But the Creator's design is a great circle, and the same prophecy that spoke of doom also whispered of a magnificent remembering. Isaiah chapter 11, verse 1, thunders that, "It shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again, the second time, to recover the remnant of his people." Moreover, the writings of Jeremiah in chapter 16, verses 14 and 15, announce a seismic shift in the cosmic story. "Therefore, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that it shall no more be said, The Lord liveth that brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. But, the Lord liveth that brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north, and from all the lands whither he had driven them. And I will bring them again into their land that I gave unto their fathers." We are currently balancing on the precipice of a second Exodus, where a restoration of biblical magnitude is not just possible, but inevitable. At the burning heart of this restoration is the awakening, the retrieval of the lost self, the sudden, shocking recollection of true identity, a spiritual phenomenon now unfurling before our gaze. All across the earth, the sleepers are tossing, opening the scrolls, tracing the crimson lines of history, and spotting the patterns, causing the systems of the beast to tremble with dread. For when you wield the knowledge of your Genesis, when you finally grasp your authentic heritage, the shackles of deception dissolve and can no longer imprison your soul. Let us map the trajectory of this epic voyage with absolute clarity. The ancient tribes shattered the holy agreement. Judgment rained down, and they scattered, fleeing into the vast, sheltering heart of Africa to merge with the multitudes there. Yet, they bore the glowing embers of their culture and law, even as the conscious recollection began to dissipate into the mists of time. Then arrived the wooden ships, the iron belly of the Leviathan, the nightmare of the Middle Passage, and the establishment of a new house of bondage in the Americas. For 4 centuries, roughly spanning from the 1600s to the upheaval of the 1960s, The curses of Deuteronomy 28 were executed in brutal mathematical detail. Even after the iron fetters were theoretically removed, the cage merely grew larger, evolving into Jim Crow, into mass imprisonment, and into a systemic malice woven into the very tapestry of civilization. But comprehend this truth. None of this was a chaotic accident. It was all written in the stars long ago. Revelation chapter 13 speaks of the beast waging war against the saints, and that is the exact, gritty reality we have lived through. The governments, the financial empires, the religious hierarchies, they are all cogwheels in a colossal engine designed to suppress, brand, and control a specific bloodline. Why would such a monolithic, centuries-spanning crusade be aimed at one singular group? Because they are the people of the ancient pact. Because the adversary is fully aware of their identity, even while they stumble blindly through the fog of their own forgetfulness. Because he knows that if they ever recall, if they ever awaken to their divine grandeur, the entire kingdom of the beast will disintegrate into nothing but dust and ash. The time has come to tear away the heavy shroud and gaze into the mechanics of this grand, orchestrated masquerade. A betrayal of such colossal proportions does not arise from the wind. It is the dark child of centuries of cold calculation, shadow work, and the crushing weight of empires united to suffocate the eternal flame of truth. When we look backward with eyes cleansed of their spells, the blueprints of this illusion emerge distinctly from the gilded corridors of the high priests and the religious elite. The great shifting of the ages took place in the year 325 at the Council of Nicaea, where Constantine gathered the bishops not to glorify the Creator, but to forge a chain of imperial command. But beneath the surface, a spiritual lobotomy was performed, a total Romanization of the ancient path, severing the lifeline to the Hebrew forefathers and systematically amputating the faith from the holy Sabbaths and the appointed feasts, replacing them with a fluid, watered-down gospel designed to satisfy the hunger of Rome rather than the soul. Any teaching that threatened to spark the memory of the true Hebraic spirit was swiftly stomped out like a dying ember in the night. The keepers of the flame, those shepherds who refused to let go of the ancestral bloodline and the Israelite connection, were cast into the abyss, their testimonies drowned out by the iron hand of the state. Deep in the belly of the Vatican, locked behind gates of iron and silence, rest scrolls that the public gaze is forbidden to touch, pages that scream the truth of the lineage of the patriarchs, and maps that trace the forgotten footsteps of the tribes into the deep earth of Africa, histories that would shatter the pale idol the world worships. Why are these archives sealed shut? Why are the hungry souls seeking their heritage turned away at the threshold of wisdom? Because the release of this thunder would pulverize the very pedestal upon which Western religious dominance and cultural arrogance rests its feet. Then the ink was spilled on the parchments of death, known as papal bulls. In 1452, Pope Nicholas V unleashed time's dum diversas asterisk, a warrant for Portugal to crush, chain, and break the children of the sun. By the year 1455, asterisk Romanus Pontifex times widened this abyss of darkness, sanctifying the marketplace of flesh and placing a holy stamp upon a bondage decreed to bind generation after generation without end. In 1493, as Columbus planted his flag in the new soil, Pope Alexander VI carved the world like a feast with time's inter caetera asterisk, dedicating the suffering of indigenous and African souls to the heavens. The house of prayer was thus transformed into a merchant slaughter yard, blessing the ships that carried human sorrow across the waters. Witness the shadow of the false prophet from Revelation 13, a holy robe speaking with the forked tongue of the dragon to build a kingdom of dust. Drift now to the age of the colonial scramble, when the iron boot of European powers stepped heavily upon the neck of Africa in the 1800s. Their first ritual was the raising of schoolhouses, but these were no libraries of liberation for the ancient history of the land. They were factories of the mind, churning out the poison that said the continent was empty, godless, and void of any gift to the human story. They preached that the children of the earth could only rise if pulled up by the cold hands of their conquerors. Whole lineages were bred to despise their own reflection, a dark alchemy of the mind that continues to spin its web through the flickering sorcery of modern media. For more than a century, the magicians of Hollywood have painted the Almighty in the image of a Roman Caesar. Every film reel casts the Messiah in pale skin, and the innocent drink this potion, letting a counterfeit divinity take root in their hearts. To bow before a rescuer who looks nothing like your own kin creates a fracture in the spirit, a subtle doubt that cuts the cord to the divine source. Make no mistake, this is a battlefield for your very consciousness, a veil woven to keep you from recognizing your own visage in the holy scrolls. The watchmen of the universities stand guard over this mirage with equal fervor, acting as sentinels of the lie. Any scholarship that dares to dig up the African roots of the text or the Hebrew connection is branded as heresy or laughed out of the hall as the rambling of a madman. Those with the courage to walk this lonely road face the death of their careers and are banished to the wilderness of academic thought. The empire protects this myth like a wounded beast, because this narrative is the keystone that holds up their entire throne. If the world were to wake up and realize the biblical Israelites were men of copper and bronze, whose sons still wear the yoke, the foundations of the earth would crack open. Let us count the lashes and map the laws that have built this invisible prison around us. The tragedy across the great waters. From the 1500s to the 1800s, 12 million lights were extinguished. Then, the year 1865 brought a false dawn, breaking the shackles only to weld them shut again, as punishment for crime, birthing the era of the chain gang and the long, cold night of Jim Crow, spanning from 1865 to 1962, cementing a wall of segregation and financial starvation, redlining from 1932 through 1962, where the state itself drew borders to choke the life and wealth out of specific neighborhoods, digging a canyon of poverty that we still stumble into today. The G.S.E. Bill, following the Second World War, was handed out with a hand that favored only the pale, widening the gap. The war on drugs, announced in 1971 and whipped into a frenzy during the 1980s, was a harvest of souls for the prison factories. The 1994 Crime Bill expanded the dungeons with mandatory years, feeding the beast of mass captivity, and in 2026 we eat the bitter fruit in the form of brutality, empty pockets, and the breaking of the body. Though the tactics change shape like smoke, the creature underneath is ancient, bearing the exact number and mark foretold in Revelation 13. Why this unending, centuries-long crusade? Why build such a fortress of lies to guard the past? Because the second the true heirs of the promise recall who they are, the spell breaks, for the dragon's kingdom can only stand as long as the deception endures. The kingdom of shadows sustains its rule through a complex tapestry of illusions, securing its throne by keeping the multitudes blinded to the radiant majesty of their true lineage and dormant power. Yet, the very moment you pierce through this veil and comprehend that you are a direct descendant of the covenant of Abraham, specifically hunted for this royal bloodline, the entire cosmic paradigm undergoes a seismic shift. No longer can you be bound by the spectral chains of a mind conditioned for oppression, nor can you be manipulated by a history fabricated by the very hands that sought to enslave you. You ascend, rooting yourself firmly in the unshakable authority of your identity as a child of the Most High, And this spiritual awakening is the precise event that the darkness fears most deeply. They tremble in anticipation of that inevitable hour when millions awaken in perfect unison, realizing that Revelation chapter 13 is not merely an ancient scroll, but a living chronicle of the war waged against their very souls for centuries. For once that lightning bolt of realization strikes and the truth takes deep, immovable root, the artificial fortress of the beast system will crumble into absolute dust. It is fundamentally impossible to oppress a people who have remembered their true name. It is impossible to shackle a spirit that has fully grasped its divine purpose and origin. You cannot vanquish a people who perceive that their agony was prophetic, and who know that their redemption is secured by the unbreakable, eternal oath of the Almighty. Behold the esoteric truth they have labored tirelessly to conceal from your eyes. You are infinitely more than the progeny of the enslaved or the forgotten. You are not merely survivors of brutal systemic oppression, nor do you dwell at the bottom of the hierarchy by some random cosmic accident or twist of fate. You are the literal offspring of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the living, breathing seed of the ancient promise, upon whom every single prophetic timeline converges. The very fact that you draw breath today is the seal of divine shielding and destiny. The beast system waged a total war against you, just as Revelation chapter 13, verse 7, foretold it would come to pass. Yet, that same sacred scroll unveils a deeper, more profound mystery. The beast is granted dominion only for a fleeting, predetermined season. Its reign is temporary, and your tribulation carries an expiration date. Your redemption is not merely approaching on the horizon, it is an absolute inevitability. It is guaranteed by the sovereign decree of the Most High. You are not the vanquished, but the victors awaiting the manifestation of a glory that has already been established in the highest heavens. The mighty river of prophecy cannot be dammed or diverted. What the Creator has purposed will surely come to pass, so allow me to unveil the truth of your essential nature. You are the descendants of the patriarchs who walked in intimate communion with God, the carriers of the covenant that has steered the entire course of human history from the shadows. You share a direct bloodline connection to Moses, to David, to the prophets, and to the lineage through which the Messiah entered this world. You are not random wanderers. You are no accident of history. You are the chosen. As Deuteronomy chapter 7 verse 6 declares, "Thou art a holy people reserved unto the Lord thy God." The sovereign Lord has selected you to be a peculiar treasure unto himself, exalted above all nations that dwell upon the face of the earth. You are the ones who were scattered to the four winds, to fulfill the ancient writings, the ones who bore the heavy iron yoke of the curses found in Deuteronomy chapter 28. Yet, by that same token, you are also the rightful heirs to the glorious promises of restoration found in Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 3, which vows that the Lord thy God will turn thy captivity, have deep compassion upon thee, and gather thee from all the nations where you have been driven in exile. Wherever the Lord has scattered you, your gathering is approaching, your restoration is prophesied, and your vindication is etched eternally in the fabric of Scripture. You are the people marked by the beast for total destruction, yet simultaneously sealed by God for an eternal weight of glory. Revelation chapter 7 describes the sealing of the 144,000 from the 12 tribes of Israel, 12,000 from each line, and this stands as a literal, unfolding truth. The Most High knows exactly who his people are. He traces the bloodlines through time, he identifies the scattered tribes, and he is summoning you back to your spiritual home. The great spiritual sealing is unfolding in this very moment, and your awakening is the divine spark that ignites this miraculous process of restoration. When you remember who you are and turn your heart back to the God of your fathers, you are marked for protection and purpose. standing as warriors in a battle that has raged for millennia. For our struggle is not against mere flesh and bone, but against dark principalities and spiritual powers that dwell in high, unseen places. The enemy is not merely human institutions, but the ancient, malevolent forces that have utilized these systems to wage war against the people of the covenant. But fear not, for you were forged in the fire and equipped specifically for this ultimate spiritual confrontation. You possess a sacred anointing for this fight. Your ancestors endured the Middle Passage, the cold chains of slavery, and the degradation of Jim Crow laws. They survived every calculated attempt at cultural erasure and physical destruction, and that survival is nothing short of a supernatural miracle. That resilience is the tangible evidence of divine favor resting upon you. You are carriers of a spirit that has captivated and influenced the culture of the entire earth. Consider how your melodies have shaped the global soundscape, how your creativity and innovation have been imitated in every land. Why is this phenomenon so pervasive? It is because there is a magnetism in your spirit that the world is instinctively drawn to it, is the undeniable anointing of the Creator. It is the same creative fire that dwelt in those who built the tabernacle and penned the Psalms. That divine artistic anointing never departed from your bloodline. It is the same spirit, the same celestial spark, proving that the word of God is true. For every curse written in Deuteronomy chapter 28 has been fulfilled in your history. And because the curses were fulfilled with such precision, it implies that every blessing and prophecy of restoration must also come to pass. If the curses were literal, then the blessings are literal. If the scattering was a reality, then the gathering is a divine certainty. If the oppression was foretold in the scrolls, so too is the liberation. You are the living evidence that Scripture is not mere mythology, but reality. You are the proof that God keeps His word in both judgment and redemption. Now, let me speak to every soul watching, regardless of your heritage or lineage. This message is not born of division, nor of hate, but of the ultimate necessity of truth and the restoration of divine order. The body of the Messiah is vast, embracing souls from every nation and tribe, just as Revelation chapters 7 through 9 reveal a great multitude standing before the throne. The golden gates of redemption have stood open since the dawn of time, a perpetual invitation for any soul brave enough to hold on to faith. But make no mistake, this universal offer of grace does not erase the ancient bloodlines, nor does it wash away the sacred prophecies carved deep into the very bones of the children of Israel. There is no contradiction here, only a perfect, terrifying harmony. The gospel rings out like a trumpet blast to every nation on earth. Yet the Israelites remain the bedrock, the unshakable people of the covenant, bound by an oath that time itself cannot destroy. And if you find that your own roots don't dig down into that specific soil, listen closely anyway. This message isn't just history, it is a lifeline for you too. When the light of truth finally breaks through the clouds, it illuminates the road for every single traveler, no matter where they started. Injustice is a cancer. When it strikes one, it threatens all. If the vast, grinding machinery of the beast has declared total war on one chosen group, understand this: it is merely the appetizer. That beast is hungry, and it aims to swallow the rest of humanity whole. Think about it. If a lie this massive has been kept alive for centuries, successfully hiding entire identities in the dark, it forces you to ask the terrifying question: what else is fake? What other lies have we swallowed? What other pieces of reality are hidden behind the curtain? Standing up for the truth isn't some casual option you pick off a menu. It is the very heartbeat of righteousness. It is a divine mandate, a requirement for anyone daring enough to walk the narrow, difficult path. When the great restoration finally arrives, there will be shelter enough for everyone who aligned their spirit with the truth. But we aren't there yet. Right now, in this fleeting moment, something magnificent is happening. An undeniable awakening is shaking the foundations of the earth. The world is waking up. The masses are blinking away the sleep, realizing with a shiver that Revelation chapter 13 isn't some fairy tale about the distant future. It is happening right now. It is the living, breathing nightmare of today. The beast's system is already here, gears grinding, smoke rising. The mark is being prepared for the foreheads of the world, and a silent, brutal war is being waged against the saints. Now that you see it, now that you know, what are you going to do with that knowledge? You can't just be a spectator. You must become a relentless hunter of the absolute truth. Dive deep into the ancient scriptures, lose yourself in them, and align your spirit with the massive work the Creator is unfolding right in front of our faces. Turn your eyes to Revelation chapter 14. See the Lamb standing victorious on Mount Zion. That isn't just a picture, it is the signal that judgment is raining down on the beast's empire. This war we are in isn't the end, it is just the warm-up act for an everlasting victory. This pain you feel? It isn't death, it is labor. You are feeling the contractions before a glorious birth. Remember Isaiah chapter 66 verse 8. Shall the earth be made to bring forth in one day, or shall a nation be born at once? For as soon as Zion travailed, she brought forth her children. That verse speaks of a restoration so fast it will make your head spin, a nation reborn in the blink of an eye, rising miraculously from the cold ashes of history. The long, agonizing night of oppression is almost over. We are trembling on the edge of dawn, ready for redemption to break through. And when this change comes, it will be swift, sudden, and impossible to ignore. So, rise up, step into your true identity. Stop letting this fallen, broken world tell you who you are. Refuse to let a corrupt system put a price tag on your soul or define your worth. They don't own you. Rip off those chains of inferiority. Tear down the lies of limitation they have woven into your mind since birth. You come from a royal priesthood. You are a chosen generation, destined for something far greater than this. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9, lays it out clearly. But ye are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, an holy nation, a peculiar people. You have been called out of the suffocating darkness and pulled into his marvelous, blinding light. Walk tall in that light. Teach your children who they really are. Shatter the generational chains of self-hate and internalized oppression that have held your family hostage for far too long. You are exactly who the Most High says you are, and there isn't a power on earth or in hell that can change that decree. And to those who helped spin the lie, your time is running out, but the sand hasn't emptied yet. Repent and get on the side of truth. Heed the stark warning of Revelation chapter 18, verse 4. Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. Align your soul with righteousness. Become a pillar of truth that cannot be moved. This is a divine summons, a wake-up call to shake off the stupor and plant your feet firmly on the solid rock of Scripture. Real restoration isn't just about feeling good. It is the enactment of divine justice. It is setting right everything that was twisted. In the kingdom to come, peace and healing will flow like a mighty river to every nation on earth. But you can't have healing without the unveiling. The hidden things have to be dragged into the light first. If this message is vibrating in your spirit right now, listen, that is the Creator calling you home. We are living through the apocalypse right now. And don't be scared of the word, it just means the revealing. If you can see the veil lifting, write the word revelation in the records below to mark this moment in time. Show that your eyes are opening to the ancient realities. Share this vision with someone who is starving for the truth. Pass it to those wandering lost in the desert of identity crises, searching for a purpose they can't name. This truth is a rising flood, and it needs to cover the earth. Bind yourself to this assembly. Wait for the signal for the next transmission, because we are going to journey even deeper into the mysteries next time. We are going to venture into Revelation chapter 14, the chapter of ultimate victory. We will take the threads of current events and economic collapse and weave them together on the loom of biblical prophecy. You will see, with crystal clarity, that we are living in the final days. And your role in this cosmic drama isn't to sit back and watch. It is active, it is vital, it is urgent. You are a living, breathing part of the Great Awakening. This is about possessing the gnosis, the knowledge of truth, and using it to break your shackles. As John chapter 8 verse 32 proclaims, "And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." Free from the mental prisons and the sticky webs of deception spun by the enemy, the truth is here, it is present. If you see your own reflection in this message, you bear a sacred responsibility. You aren't just waking up for yourself. You are doing it to vindicate your ancestors. You are doing it to save your children. When God's people finally stand firm in their divine identity, the kingdom advances with a force that cannot be stopped. This is the central story of human history, and you are the actors standing center stage. The ending is already written in stone. The beast is defeated. Babylon crumbles into dust. The kingdom arrives in glory. The saints are vindicated, and the downtrodden are lifted high. Live your life knowing how the movie ends. Walk with the confidence of a king and the authority of a priest. You are walking in a victory that was secured before the foundations of the world were even laid. You are the living lineage. You are the channel through which the blessings promised to Abraham are destined to flow, rushing outward to heal all nations. You have been through the fire, refined in the furnace of affliction, and you came out faithful. Your suffering wasn't for nothing, it was training. Your survival was an act of divine preservation. Your awakening signals the beginning of the end for the beast system. It is the first crack in the dam. It is the fissure in the fortress wall. Every soul who spreads this truth is another trumpet blast, announcing the return of the King. Be bold, be courageous, never be ashamed of your heritage. You have the backing of the Most High God. The system might look like an invincible monolith, but it is just a fragile house of cards. When the breath of God blows, it will collapse, and you will be the one left standing in the ruins. Let us seal this gathering with prayer, anchoring these heavy truths deep within the bedrock of our faith. Most High God, Yah, we offer our deepest gratitude for this revelation. We thank you for opening our eyes to mysteries that have been hidden in the dark for ages. We thank you for this appointed time, this moment where the veil is being torn apart and your people are finally remembering their ancient names. Thank you for keeping a remnant safe, for keeping your covenant secure through the violent storms of history. We stand here as living proof that your word cannot be broken. We ask for the strength to walk in this light and to speak this revelation, even when the world tries to shut us up. Grant us the iron will to stand firm when the system tries to crush us. We pray for your divine protection over every single awakened soul. Cover us with the shadow of your wings. Let no harm touch those who are waking up and standing tall for righteousness in this hour of judgment. While the adversary storms uselessly within the darkening gloom, you remain seated upon the throne of eternity, gazing down from above the terrestrial sphere in total, unmatched dominion. We elevate our families and our ancestors before the celestial altars of old. Let this grand awakening surge like an unstoppable torrent through our veins, cleansing every generation with holy fire. We command the shattering of the heavy iron chains of spiritual blindness that have held us captive. Let every generational curse be overturned and scattered like ash in the wind. May the timeless rewards of walking in righteousness now begin to blossom, manifesting as a tangible, glowing presence in our physical reality. Summon back every treasure and blessing the marauder has stolen from our spiritual storehouses, and infuse our exhausted souls with the breath of resurrection. We stand in the gap for the four corners of creation. May the scattered 12 tribes perceive the vibration of this holy summons and ascend from the ends of the earth. We declare that the enigmatic secrets of the final prophecies, particularly the 13th chapter of the Revelation, are now stripped of their veils before the wise, and our victory is carved into the bedrock of eternity. We exhale the spirit of vitality, piercing clarity, and preordained greatness over every soul bearing witness to this decree. Let this reality resonate within the very core of your bones. You have never been abandoned in the wilderness. You were forged for conquest. Accept now the tranquility that defies all human logic. Stand firm as the ancient mountains, immovable, and keep your vigil sharp like the sentry guarding the fortress walls. The primordial pacts are locked with sacred fire, and our mortal eyes shall soon behold the blinding glory of the Supreme One. If your spirit aligns with this truth, record your vow below and unite with this assembly of light-bearers. Amplify this frequency until it touches the edges of the known universe. The hour has struck to awaken the dormant realms from their long hibernation. Walk fearlessly into the divine appointment written in the stars for your life. Transform into the breathing vessel of illumination and truth. Remain the unyielding remnant, standing your ground until the monarch of glory tears the heavens asunder. May a profound peace settle upon you, O kin of the eternal covenant. Until our energies intertwine once more in the celestial realms, traverse your path cloaked in supernatural favor. Keep your inner eye wide open to the omens. Stay deeply rooted in the wisdom of the timeless scrolls,